Good day, all of you. Welcome to the webinar for team leads. Today's webinar is about the OEE Toolkit for our customers. We're still waiting for some people to start their participation, so we'll take a minute for that. I'm really excited to be here today. I hope you're looking forward to this next hour as well. Well, we'll go to the next slide. I'm Roos Helweg. I'm the OEE Toolkit marketeer, and today's presenter is Herman Guigelaar. He's an OEE Toolkit expert and a business consultant. First of all, I want to mention that we'll be recording today's session, so please be aware of that. The agenda of today is that I'm opening the webinar right now, and after that I will give the word to Herman. He will talk about what OEE is and how you can make the best use of it, and especially focused on the role of team leads. After his presentation, he will give a live demo and we'll have time for questions and answers after that. Throughout this webinar, you're free to ask a lot of questions through the chat function, which I'll use right now. Welcome to the webinar. After the webinar has ended, we'll send you an email probably the next day to ask your feedback and give you the access to the recording of the webinar. So now, without further ado, I want to ask Herman to give the presentation.
Thank you, Roos. Good day to everybody. As mentioned, my name is Herman Guigelaar. I'm working with the company Full Fact Solutions, and I'm presenting this webinar about the OEE Toolkit and how to have more revenues out of it. First of all, who are we? Most people already know that because a lot of listeners are already customers with us. We are Full Fact Productivity Solutions, a small company in the Eindhoven in the south of the Netherlands. OEE experience since 1995, used in over more than 5,000 lines and approximately 10,000, 11,000 users worldwide. Some of our customers on the right, also some of the viewers of this webinar. So welcome everybody. Also the new customers that are not listed already, but will be in the future, hopefully. Topics. Target group operators, the most important group in your factory. If they work well, your lines will work well. Focus on the training, learn what OEE is and what is not. The role of the operator, once again, very important. And learn more about working with the software. What does OEE mean? Big question. Overall equipment effectiveness. OEE effectiveness, not efficiency. Some people mix them up together, but it's all about effectiveness. And what's the difference between the two of them? We have a process, machine line, the main process, production, adding value to a product. But first of all, the product has to be entered into the machine. That's where the efficiency comes in. The amount of resources needed to execute the process. Last one, effectiveness is the ratio between the actual and theoretical output. I always compare it to soccer. The way you get to the goal of the opposite, that's efficiency. And if you make a goal out of it, yes or no, that's effectiveness. So it's all about the products that come out of your production line. Continuous improvement, where does OEE fit in? OEE is a tool for the continuous improvement. It's not OEE is not a holy grail. It's just a tool that provides figures to the continuous improvement. But where do we fit in? Every business has a certain cycle that consists of planning. Then you do something according to your planning. You check what you did, and then you act. You make a new plan. You put the plan active, and you do it, and you check it, etc. Our OEE system comes into the check. That's all we do. We do the checking of the machine, the numbers, the products, the time, etc. We don't just the machine. We don't put the people in place. We just check what's the effectiveness of the machine and the productivity. So it's learning through measuring OEE, shift daily, weekly, monthly. OEE is all about losses, and why? Because if you have a production facility that produces very well, your productivity is rising, everybody's happy, but most of the time you still have a maximum machine capacity. And the maximum machine capacity is the capacity that almost never will be reached, because there are always factors that influence that maximum machine capacity. So between the maximum machine capacity and the real production that you achieve, there's something that is the losses that we are interested in. So OEE is all about losses. We're interested in the losses between the maximum machine capacity and your production at the moment. The ideal machine. The ideal machine runs always. That would be nice. Maximum speed and without quality problems. But in fact, in reality, the machines producing parts of poor quality, not running at maximum speed, not running continuously, and last, having minor stops while running. All machines have that. Some people refuse to believe that quality is an issue, but all factories do produce sometimes poor quality, don't run at maximum speed, not running continuously, and have minor stops. And the last one, you'll be amazed how many minor stops you will encounter when you do the calculation and the counting of them. Overall equipment effectiveness. We have three main categories. First one, availability. The second one, performance, and the third one, quality. Those are the main categories of your OEE. The availability is how much time per shift was the machine actually running. And per shift is because we at FullFact do the registration by shift. So how much time per shift was the machine actually running? So you planned the machine for 8 hours, but due to circumstances, you were only running for 6 hours. Within those 6 hours, how well did the machine perform? How many times of those 6 hours did the production run at maximum capacity? And last but not least, the quality. How many products were first time right? And this means really first time right. Where you pick a product out of your production line, it's not perfect, you have to put it back. It takes the time of an actual new product. So it's most important how many products were first time right. Those three categories, you can multiply them, you get a percentage, and that's your OEE. OEE goal, show all effective losses. Theoretical production time, then you get your planned production time, because planned downtimes will be taken off your theoretical production time. No orders, projects, and training are examples of planned downtimes. Next one is the operating time. And the operating time is what you get when you have the planned production time and you take the unplanned downtimes from it. Examples of them: failures, breakdowns, setups, and adjustments. Next one is the time to produce good products. You have the operating time, but it won't be available. The availability won't be 100%. So available will not be most of the time 100%. So time to produce good products is less, and that's performance losses. Idle time handover, speed reduced. Number of good products is the quality. Quality losses, some examples, defects in process and defects in materials. The three categories can be recognized. Operating time is your availability. Time to produce good products within the availability is performance loss. And the number you produced due to the time of producing is quality loss, the quality. You put the calculation to it, 1 day, 24 hours. 1 shift is 8 hours. Your operating time was 6 hours out of 8 hours, meaning 75%. If you're producing 100 pieces per hour, 75% availability. If you're producing 100 pieces per hour and you had 6 hours, you could have been producing 600 pieces. You only produced 450, so your performance is also 75%. Then the maximum number of good products could have been 450, but you do have quality losses, and that results in a percentage of 250 pieces, meaning 56%. If you multiply those percentages, you get your OEE, and that's in this case 32. Actually, the number itself means nothing. If you have an OEE of 32%, it says nothing, because OEE is all about improvement. If it was yesterday, it was 30%, then you're doing well because you did an improvement. If yesterday was 34, you have some work to do, but you get an indication with the OEE that it was not that maximum that you're supposed to get. So it's not important what the number is, but it's important where you came from and where you're going to with the number of your OEE. OEE standstill categories. Once again, OEE, 3 major categories. The first one, availability. Availability is measured in real time by the sensor activity. If products passes by, it's available. If no products passes by, it's unavailable due to a certain circumstance. Performance. Performance is calculated. The number of the minutes that you could be producing and the number of products that passes by determines what performance that you have. Last but not least, the quality again. Quality is calculated by the rejects, or you can put it in manually into our system. Those 3 categories are used for calculating the OEE. Availability consists of idles. That means the machine stopped producing due to an interference with the operator. Operator puts the machine in a halt for some reason. Training, the machine has to be cleaned or has to be changed by product. So that's the idle. The other one for availability is failure. That means that the machine broke down. We can say it in short, a third person has to be called to repair the machine and get it running again. Last active is the line restraint. Line restraint, no input in front of the machine and no output at the end, not possible to get your output in your store. So you have to stop the line, otherwise it will pile up. Second category, the performance, consists of speed loss and reduced speed. Reduced speed, this too hot, you just turn down the speed of the machine. That way you have a performance loss because you could have producing much more at the same time. Speed loss is something like the short idles that we have in all machines. Most of the time you have no notice of them, but when you use our software, you see how many times that you have a speed loss and what's the total time that you lost in your performance. Quality, we have waste and rework. Waste, scrap, you throw it away. Rework, a label did not come on the product well, you take the label off, you put a new label on it, that's rework. but a quality loss. It did not come out first time right. You could have produced another product while you had to rework. Last one is unscheduled. This is when you have no production, no orders, no personnel. In fact, it's, I always say, when the factory, the lights get out and you don't turn the machines on. That's unscheduled. And those four are the main categories for the standstills that the operator has to use to define why the machine is not functioning as an optimum. We leave those four. And those are the responsibility of the operator. He has to be aware that if he has to put in the standstills and the activities, that he does it right, because it's input to the continuous improvement. If he chooses as a standstill always a break, you can't improve the breaks. Yeah, you can, but that's not the purpose of continuous improvement. Mention this to the operators that is their responsibility, and they have to put in the standstill reasons in the correct way. Together with other authorities, they could get within our software log files, splitting activities, etc. Correct data entry by the operator is crucial for good reporting. That's a motto. And this is a slogan. The operator is a key factor for success. If the operator is not willing to do what he has to do in a correct way, the software will fail. And the continuous improvement does not get good input for improvement to realize.
We have a question.
Yes.
The question is, from an OEE perspective, is it better to calculate changeovers as downtime, idle time, or should this be factored into the planned runtime on a production work order?
What we always suggest is that it's an idle time, because if you have production and the machine is running and you have to change the product for a changeover, you manually stop the machine while it could have been running. It's an order, you have to do it, but the machine is not down. The machine is scheduled to produce, so it's an idle time. It's a manual action from the operator to stop the machine. I hope this answers your question. Yes, we go further. This is your organization. It fits like a puzzle perfectly. You have different departments, such as administration, logistics, production, technical department, and they all speak the same language. They all speak their own language. Administration about money, logistics about deliverance, just-in-time deliverance, technical department about repairments and people that they need, production about the number of products. And when they ask something from another department, it's often difficult to understand each other. You get noise on your communication line. Administration only wants to know how much euros or dollars of production has cost, but production only thinks in numbers of production of pieces. When you start to use OEE, you're able to get the same language within your complete organization. Administration can convert dollars, euros into the number of products. Logistics can count that when they are late with their providing their input for the production line, how many products that could have been produced waiting for logistics. So if you're using OEE, you get the same language within your company and less noise on your communication lines.
We have another question, and that is, will quality defects impact the overall quality factor in the OEE?
If I understand the question well, if you are registering your quality well and you have your scrap and rework registered in a good way, having sensors at the rejects, if you can calculate the numbers of scrap by the operator, he can fill it manually. If you register properly, you get a better OEE because it influences your OEE in the total, because taken into consideration with the multiplying of the categories. The quality is a main category, and often people and factories refuse to count them because they have good products all over, but in fact they also have bad products. So yes, it's very important, and it influences your OEE in the end very much.
We got another question, and that is, will quality defects in the components, leaflets, cartons, etc., impact the overall quality factor in the OEE? Or is the OEE considering only the quality product as finished goods? Quality products as finished goods. Is the question clear to you?
It sounds like the same question that I had before. It's almost the same answer. If you have a quality issue at a labeler or at the palletizer, it influences the performance that you have, and you get less products out of it. If it's really a problem, a failure, or when you have a problem that you have to shut down the production line because the palletizer can't get rid of the pallets because the trolley was not available or you had no personnel to do so, it also influences your OEE because in that way it's a line restraint. So yes, if you have a problem with a certain machine within your production line, it influences your OEE, either the way of your availability or your performance, but also indeed in quality, because if you have a labeler that puts the labels not right on the product and you have to do them again, that influences indeed your quality and therefore your OEE calculation. I hope that this one also is answered correctly, because we cannot get any response. I'm just going further with the presentation. Next is the pyramid of communication within a company. Bottom line, lower management. That means team leaders, shop floor, etc. Middle management. And at the end, we have top management. And they all have their own interest. Lower management is interested in tools, production line. Middle management in tools, production line, and budget. Top management is interested in money. We have communication upwards, we have communication downwards. They don't always speak the same language. The middle management is eager to know how many he has to invest and what that does with his budget for the coming year. Lower management don't care about the cost of the line, production line, they just want to have good tools. And the top management is interested in one thing: what's the return of investment and profit on long term. This means that you can have noise in your communication from bottom up and from top down. Therefore, if you use the OEE and you use the reports and the graphics of our software, you can convert the question for a tool into budget and budget into revenues for your return of investment. This goes upwards and downwards as well. So less noise within your communication, because you can visualize and put numbers into number of personnel, tools, investing, etc. The impact of a OEE implementation. First of all, direct insight and results and bigger losses for everybody. The moment you use our software with actual good registration, you immediately get a good insight in what you're producing, the standstills, short idles, very much surprising always. So that's very quickly after using the software. You will discover the potential of your machines. Often they're not the maximum capacity that they were told they were having by the people that built the machines, but in practice you will discover the real potential of the machine. Unification of information exchange, less noise. We discussed that just with the pyramid and the way of communicating within departments of a factory. You get less noise when you use the OEE. Cost reduction, production inventory, order throughput, time, etc. Cost reduction because you can do a better planning. Your logistics can be better in performance. Your inventory can be a lot less. So yes, you can have cost reduction and therefore better production and happier people within your company. Line management and operators have a key role. Once again, can't say that enough. Line management operators are the most important people for your continuous improvement. If they use the software well, you get a lot of useful information from our software. You can do the continuous improvement, you can start projects to improve, and that should result in better machines, more effectiveness, and in the end, happy personnel on the shop floor. And that's a key thing to mention to the operators on the shop floor. It's their software. It's especially for them, not for the management. In the end, the management will profit, but in the beginning, it's especially for improvement on the workflow for the operators itself. Explanation will take perseverance and effort. When we leave, our software is installed. It's not an optimum at the moment. It takes time to get an optimum, to do the fine tuning, etc. The shop floor will like the ease of use. It's one of the most simplest systems in the world for the operators. The system detects when there is a standstill, it asks for a reason, and it automatically detects when you have production again. So not much to do for the operator on our system. So he has more time to solve problems and issues if they are there. Higher involvement of the production team. When they see that the continuous improvement improves the effectiveness of the machine, they get the feeling that they are listened to, they're not neglected. When they have suggestions, pick them up, do something with it, put it in our system. The region of standstills that are not present at the moment. If an operator says so, please take care of it and make it available for the next day. Then he gets involved and he's part of the production team, and production team is part of your production line. Maintenance, you can register them. That way you measure the effect of maintenance on effectiveness. How good was the maintenance? And possibility to measure effectiveness of maintenance. So your machine gets better of the maintenance, but did the maintenance, did their work well? And that goes two ways. One way is operators are always waiting for maintenance, for technical department. But when you register how long they are waiting, it's not as long as they felt. Waiting feels always very long, and in reality, it's often less time. How many time does it take between two breaks? The same, the mean time in between. That's an example of the measurement of effectiveness of maintenance. Last but least, use the correct speed. When adjusting too low, you're creating hidden losses. I will explain that to you, the hidden losses. If you have a defined speed of machine, which is 100%, that's a standard. That's the definition in OEE. The standard is the speed of the product on a certain production line. This one is 100%. On day one, you produce on 90%. It was not an optimum, but it was the beginning, and therefore 90%. You're quite satisfied. But the next day, you turn it up to 110%. So you equaling that to the standard. Everybody's happy. One day, day one and day two, immediate and 100%. But in fact, what you really did was you started the machine at 90% and day two on 110%. Day one could have also started on 110%. So on day one, you actually had a loss of 20%. And that's a hidden loss that will be visible when you use the software and you look at the performance and availability. What makes an implementation successful? We had a survey with customers where we installed the software and they were using it already quite a while. The first thing was important is the culture. accepted in the organization, it has to become a way of thinking. It has to be in a person. When they come at work, they have to think about OEE. And if you have it accepted, that's often a problem to get it accepted in the organization, because some people see it as a threat, but most of the time, in the end, they will accept it as they see the profit of it. Visibility should be visible in all layers within the organization. Use the OEE boards, use big screens on the ceiling, on the wall, make it visible what the OEE does, how the status is at this moment, and that you make progression on it. Usability, reporting and analysis in front, in the right format and useful. When you have reports and pies and bars all in red color, it says nothing. Make it useful, make it understandable for the people. Don't make it too difficult for everybody. Simplicity, ease of use of the software, especially on the shop floor. As I mentioned earlier, it's one of the easiest software that you can use on the shop floor. The road ahead, where we go to when our software is installed, what we do with the continuous improvement. First of all, we have the optimize of the OEE measurement. That's where we come in. We hope to give you the numbers that you can use and that they are reliable. Next, you get performance dialogues. Talk about it, discuss about it, set up small group activities. Visualize results, make it available, show people what you're doing, what you have achieved, and then embed behavior. When you embed behavior, then you get in the end continuous improvement, because everybody understands why you do it, and you do it almost automatically. You don't have to think about it. You see things, you can correct them. So this way is the road ahead. And now I give the word back to, no, we first do the demo. I got almost confused. We first do the demo. First of all, I will show you the OEE Blue software. Let's see. This is the main screen of our OEE Blue software. It always opens with the last shift that it has registered. Data in the registration will be written to the database at the end of the shift. And this can be done manually or automatically using our shift scheduler. The shift scheduler is a piece of software that you can input with data, which machine starts at which date, which time, and will be changed to the next shift on which time. And our software will pick up that scheme and will perform those shift changes automatically. Over here, you see the navigation of the shifts. Over here, you see the comments of the operators that they can put in. This is your OEE chart with 3 main categories and the results of the multiplication of them. Over here, you see a list of all the activities that occurred during the shift, with the frequency that they occurred to, and the number of operators that were involved with them. If you have made a mistake at the shop floor and you want to change it, you can just select another one, no schedule. In this case, no schedule means the OEE will be involved, because this will not be counted as a shutdown of the system. So you have to do a recalculation, and then you get different numbers, more positive because a standstill was replaced by no schedule. Down here, you get an overview of your products. If you select the productivity, you see the products that you were producing, including the scrap and rework that you had, because they influence your quality. You can see the number of the breakdowns of the scrap and rework and the kind of scrap and rework that you had. On top, there's a number of icons that represent all the reports that you can use within the system. There are a lot of them. I picked just one It's always the same mechanism, the kind of reports that you have and the method of putting a filter on it. And I guess we got a question.
Yes. Can we change the category of the loss after the shift has ended?
That is possible if you close this screen. If you go to this one, broken bottles, you can change the number to a different category. So you can change the scrap to rework, and depending on the number of reworks that you defined, you can specify the kinds of rework. You can choose that product as the kind of rework that you want to specify instead of the scrap. So it's actually the same as changing the activities. You can change the product as well. But that's only possible for the back office and only for the persons who have the right authorization to do so. So it's possible. You have a wide variety of authorizations that you can assign to different users. Okay, we continue with the reporting. A lot of icons in the top. They have tabs on top of them, and you can choose what kind of report you want to have displayed. On the bottom, you can filter the data that you want to show, the dates, group by which machine. If you don't select a machine, shift, or team, it will show all the machines, shift, and teams within this period. This is the filter that is already active. If you take the split losses, you have to calculate, and it will produce a nice overview of the split losses that you had during the period that I suggested as a filter. Line restraints added to it as quickly as possible. Rework, scrap, I leave it out. Reduce speed. So you have quickly a pretty good overview of the losses and the performance. This is just a small period. If you pick a longer one, you often see trends within your diagrams. So it's very useful. If you go to another one, OEE bar, it's very quickly. Select another one if you want your Pareto of your standstills. You can select this one, press calculate, and it will show up what you had. Yes.
What is the difference between machine and team?
The difference between machine and team? Okay. A machine, I'll show it by defining in the master data. The master data, you have the possibility to define all the components that we need of your production environment to register your OEE. At first, you have to define the machines, and what we register in the machines, define is if it's active, the name of the machine, the NPC, the nameplate capacity, the maximum production capacity that this machine should be having, the single pieces per minute, the OEE thresholds between under and above. And this one is actually very important because all the other information will be connected to this machine. Where you have a team, you define the name of the teams and if they are active, yes or no. And the only thing you do with the team is to assign them to a machine on a certain time with a certain shift. So if you have, for example, team A and team B are always working on the filler, then you can assign team A and B being shift early, shift late for that particular machine. But the same team can also be the night shift on the second machine. So the team is only for administrational purposes and that you can search on it. But the machine definition is very important because all the other data is put onto that machine. It's connected to that machine. And the teams and the shifts are just assigned to them as an administrative purpose. That's the difference between the two of them. Okay, was telling about the reports on top of them. I will mention the last one is very useful. The period report, the quality management report. If you select the report for, let's say, long ago, because this is not a very young database, January, this date, create report. It should pop up. But as always with demos, it does not pop up. Let's see, other dates. I do have a problem with the date in my database, it looks like. So I'm not getting any reports at all. No, I can't get them on my screen. I have, at the moment, I have about, let's say, 9 different reports, but I can show them on the screen right now because of the presentation method that we're using at the moment. So I have to skip this one. If you're interested in having some examples of them, please do send an email to us. We will provide you with all the information that you want on this issue. The rest of the master data, products, as I mentioned, the name, ID, description. If it's good, scrap or rework. The equivalence, that means the factor. If you're producing bottles and at the end of the production line, you put them on a production on the tray, you can count the trays and you can convert a tray with 6 bottles into a production of 6 bottles. That's the equivalent, and that's the production factor. Visibility, active. If a product is taken out of production, you can put them in passive or hidden. This way it will stay in your historical database for reviews later on, but it won't be available for the production in the shop floor. Next one is the activities. This is the total list of all the activities that you have within your OEE system. Regardless which machine, all the activities should be present. So if you want to create a button for the operator, the first thing you have to do is to create the activity on this list. For example, add, why not, test. You select the process test and you created a new activity over here. When done that, you go to the most important table, the machine time product. That's where you assign to the machine all the activities that you want to assign the machine, and from there on the products that this machine has to produce. That's different from the other machine. So this is the way that you connect the activity to a machine and the product to a machine. Be aware that at this moment I have not defined the buttons for the operator. That is something you have to do in the remote collect. So it's a 3-stage process. The first time you define the activity in the complete list. Second, you assign the activity to the machine. And last but not least, you make it visible for the operator who is working on that production line, that machine. So far for the OEE Blue. I wanted to show you a little piece of the remote collect software. Let's see. No. There she goes. So I hope this is visible. Quite a job to get it on the screen. Having two screens and one presentation software, that makes a lot of switching. This is the production screen, first one that the operator sees. When you press this one, you get the possibility to define your product that you are producing. If you select this one, you get to see the production. Over here, you see the total number of products that you produced, the actual speed that you're producing with, the target speed that you had to produce with, but you can't make it because you're running at low speed, the number of the production cycle at this moment, and the total actual time of all the production cycles that you already did. Production is running. When I create a standstill, the software will detect automatically that you have a standstill and asks for the reason for the standstill. Let's see. If you have a reason for the standstill, no. There's another thing that refuses to work at the moment. My production line simulator is not reacting very well. Something I will show. I will just go back. You get a pop-up of the four main categories: the idles, the failures, the line restraints, and unscheduled. And the operator just presses on the screen, if he has a touch screen, the button that he wants to select as the reason for the standstill. And then he has to do nothing else, because when production restarts, the system detects automatically that it has a restart of production and will continue the counting of the products, the correct counting, and finishes the standstill. The possibility for the operator, depending on the authorization that he gets, is that he has the possibility to change the product, to change the standstill, not changing the duration of the standstill, but the reason of the standstill. It's also possible, when the standstill is active, that he can split it into a new standstill. Therefore, we can assign maximum times to a certain standstill on a certain machine. And when that time exceeds, the system asks for another reason why it's still standing still, because the maximum time from the previous one has exceeded. So there's a lot of possibilities for the operator, using logbooks, entering data, which will be shown on the OEE Blue software in the back office. So it's very, very easy system to use. But don't use production simulators, because they don't always function as you see at this moment. Closing down software, you have the question if you want to have reports printed automatically. The reports that you could print is the shift report. You have the possibility to store the shift report and the Gantt chart of the shift to the database, and you can look it up later on from within the reports that I showed you in the OEE Blue. Okay, so far so good. Now we switch over to, let's see. There we are again.
We have some questions we got from you all. The first question I'll ask Herman is how to coach and support the correct entry of losses into the OEE system. Herman?
The main thing is that you define your master data correctly. Be sure that the definition of the activities are the activities that you want to register. And the things you want to register are the things that you want to look at for your continuous improvement. Don't define all the possible standstills, but make a selection of them, especially in the beginning. The operator does not need all the standstills in the beginning because you can't focus for your continuous improvement on all factors. So keep the number of activities that you want to start with limited. Be sure that you have motivated your operators in a good way, because if you define the standstills, you're depending on the operator to select them when you have a standstill. So those are the two main factors for a good registration of your OEE. Further on, I would suggest that you register 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just turn on the machine, use the shift scheduler. The shift scheduler will change the shift, stop the registration of the software, and restart it at Monday morning. But then you have a good overview of your planned production time and real production time. So those are the main factors for a good registration and getting the most out of your OEE.
Another question is, how do we use the OEE toolkit to get the most accurate results regarding OEE, performance, and quality?
It's actually the same. Be aware that your master data is correctly. Have a good training for your operators. Make it popular to work with. Your master data should be correct. Use the shift scheduler. Those are the main factors for using our software. Master data, of course, the activities should be present, otherwise you can't select them. And they should be selected if they are important. Minor standstills, they come on a later time scale than the big ones. The big ones are the most important ones in the beginning because you get the most out of it when you use the continuous improvement. So the training of the operators, the involvement of them, motivating them is very, very important. And of course, the correct data to choose from by them.
Can you tell us more about error types and input details?
Error types and input details. Still, I would just come back to the master data. That has to be good, has to be thought of and defined well and implemented as well. Very good. Let's see. The error types that you defined have to be sufficient to base your improvement on. If you have error types that you don't need, don't mention them in your system to the operators. Input details, don't go too much into detail, especially not in the beginning. The operators have to get used to it, they have to accept it, and when they got flooded with all kinds of standstills that they don't know about and never seen before, they don't like the system at all. And make sure that's the system measuring your production and not the operator itself.
And can you tell us what data is required to calculate the OEE or utilization at the start of each batch? Shift type, SQE, SQU, team, etc.
The data that is needed for a good registration of the OEE with our software is that you need a product, of course. You need the product speed. Besides that, you need to know what production line and the speed of production line should be, because that's how you define the standard of your production on that line. Other things is the threshold for the short idles and the standstill regions. If you make them too short, the operator gets too many questions about the standstills, and when you make them too long, you don't get a good overview of the duration of the actual important standstills. So I suggest that you start and see what the results are of your short idles and the duration of the standstills. And if you want to have a more detailed overview, change the thresholds of your idle time, the thresholds of your short idles and the stoppage codes. And have your products well defined, also your quality products, the scrap and rework. Because if you define them well, you can make use of them and you get a good overview of your quality and therefore a good calculation of your OEE. Hope this one answers the question.
Well, is it possible to see the actual utilization of a given line, regardless of the plan entered for that period?
Yes, it's possible. If you have the production line running, the actual data of the production cycle at that moment of the shift is written to the database at the end of the shift. So you have to wait for the complete information. But it's possible to have a piece of software that's called a web dashboard that gives a real-time display of the production line, the number of products you produced, the status of the line, the standstill, the product that you're producing, and about 46 KPIs that you can define that should be shown on the screen. Per line, you have the possibility to show 8 of the KPIs per production line and the Gantt chart of the time scale of the production at that moment. So yes, it's possible to see real time, but that's a different module called the web dashboard.
Another question we have is, we got from one of our customers, is that they've been experiencing several instances of a hardware network failure on a certain line that has not been linked to any power or user failure from the site. What are potential causes of this error and how can we prevent that?
Most common issue is the accessibility through your network, interchange of data between VLANs, changes in your firewall, really hardware issues in your hardware, such as routers, firewalls, cabling systems, outlets, and the wall outlets for your cabling system. It almost always goes back to failure within your network due to hardware or wrong definitions. Incidentally, it can be caused by corruption in the data, but almost always it's a part of your infrastructure. So even if there's no power surge or power problem or the people were doing their best, have a good look at your network as well as performance as definitions.
Okay, thank you. Another question we got is, what are the parameters master data require to show the utilization reports?
As I was saying, the master data that you need for good reporting are the data that can be gathered by our OEE system, meaning the machine, the product, the speed, the activities that you can choose from. And finally, make a good selection of the filters that you use. If you want to show data about certain standstills, be sure that you select the right categories and standstills that you want to have reported. Further on, if you use the system normally and you've defined all the master data, everything is possible within our system, within the reports that are available at the moment.
Okay, well, we're running short on time. I think we can answer maybe one more question.
Yes, we can.
We can?
Yeah.
Shall we answer the question on what the product multiplier is?
Yeah, that's an easy one. The product multiplier is the factor that I explained with the bottles. You're producing bottles and at the end you put them on a tray. Let's say 6 bottles on a tray. You're counting the trays. So you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trays. and actually you produced 30 bottles. So within the multiplier, you can translate the number on the trace into the number of produced bottles. And that's also defined per product, per production line. So every product on every production line has its own factor if necessary. By default, it's one product counted, one product produced. But if you use the factor, you have to define that for every product on every production line.
Do we still have a couple of seconds to go into answering the previous question, but then more on the capacity utilization, or shall we take that offline?
Just ask.
Okay.
If you want to. I'm
Yeah.
still here,
okay.
so ask.
Okay. Can you go into capacity utilization?
Capacity utilization.
Yeah,
You mean over this and over here on the screen? Because I'm not sure what you mean by capacity utilization, but what we have is registration of your production. These are the standstills that you have, which can be shown. These are the products that are produced. The speed, the average speed that was used to produce this number of products that could have been producing this one if you used the standard speed. I don't know what more information that you would like to have from this, but I think we have to ask the person that asked the question what exactly was meant, and we come to that. We come back to that in the email and response that we will send to them. Because at the moment I don't have a good view of what is really meant by the question.
Okay, well then let's do it like that. Could you please reach out to us about your question on the capacity and the utilization report? Well, this brings us to the end of our webinar. I want to thank you for hanging in there with us. I really liked it, so I hope you are as happy about this webinar as I am. We'll be sending you an email with a short survey to ask your feedback and also to ask you about topics you would like us to cover in another webinar in the future. And we'll publish the recording of this webinar so you can watch it or point your colleagues towards it. And we'll hope to see you next time. Have a nice day and thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.